All right, welcome everyone.
Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos.
It's okay. Thank you all for joining us for the
Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Sustainable Communities Working Group. Our Chair Linz is unable to attend today's meeting due to a family emergency, so I'll be your chair today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Toma. I'm a senior regional planner here at SANDAG. I'm also your community liaison here. And then before we begin, I'll pass it over to our interpreter for today's meeting, who will provide an explanation on how to use the interpretation devices and access to interpretation online. Go ahead, interpreter.
Please note that the interpretation services are being offered in today's session. To listen to comments given in Spanish, please select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen where it says interpretation. Then select your language, English. You will then be able to hear a live rendering of the comments in English. Thank you. Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación para la sesión de hoy. Para escuchar el programa en español, seleccione el icono o la etiqueta del globo en la parte de la barra inferior de su pantalla, que dice Interpretation. Luego seleccione su idioma, Spanish, y de ahí podrá escuchar todo el programa en español. Gracias.
Thank you. I would like to ask our clerk to perform roll call and confirm we have quorum.
We do have quorum.
We want a hand raised? Are we good?
Yeah, we can raise hand.
All hands raised. Everybody's here. 1, 2, 3. Yep, we're all good. All right, thank you, clerk. Now I would like to review the meeting process for both working group members as well as members of the public who wish to participate. For working group members, when you would like to speak, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Clerk, can you provide a quick reminder on how the public comments will work?
If you are a member of the public here in the room and you would like to provide comment on an item, please submit a speaker slip to me prior to the start of the item. If you are a member of the public joining us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand for the item you would like to comment on once it begins. Members of the public in person will be called on first, followed by virtual commenters. You will be referred to by the name used or the last 3 digits of your telephone number. Thank you.
Thank you, clerk. Do any working group members have any questions before we continue? No? Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to item 1, which is a non-agenda public comments. We will take SANDAG staff and working group member comments first, and then move on to public comment. Our brief announcement today is that you are all invited to our upcoming joint working group meeting, which is on February 13th at 10 a.m. at the San Diego Central Library. The meeting will focus on providing an update on the 2025 regional plan and will include opportunities to discuss it alongside other working group members and SANDAG staff. And Chesley DeLeon, our assistant planner, she'll follow up with you all with a shared calendar invite and for more information. Do any working group members have any non-agenda comments or announcement to share with the group here today? If so, please raise your hand at this time. No comments? Okay, thank you. And then before we move to public comments, per board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of these items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comments. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have quorum. So based on those factors for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments. Now, do we have any comments from the public, clerk?
Why is this? Yes, for item 1, we have 2 public comments. We will have Ayuda followed by Caesar.
Good morning. Thank you, SANDAG. A letter of December 4th, 2024 from my Dr. Sharp Hospital. My patient Rita Javier requests my documentation in regard to how her surrounding environment affect her health. She continues to have significant anxiety in regard to the possible health effects related to the quality around her home. Her neighbors have a kiln and use it, which may have contributed to adverse symptoms, if not to her health physically, then psychologically. She lives in fear and in her home and avoid being outside. The anxiety has contributed to increased forgetfulness and elevated blood pressure. Appreciate your review and please take this into consideration that your decisions regarding the matter.
Row your boat gently down the stream view, District 9, City of San Diego. Help SANDAG.
Okay.
Life is like a dream. I hope I will not be warned from our body language, verbal expression. It's true. We are not enjoying life in our home, in our property. Why? Because the governance has ruled that ceramic kiln is okay. It's exempt, like what most of projects SICA exempt. Why exempt? Science says it's a hazardous activity. You weigh the job provision to the workers, to the owners, versus the impact, unintended impact. How do you weigh it? Is it beneficial? Is it safe? Is it okay to health? Those are the parameters supposed to be considered in making such rule exempt. How could we play the right game, honestly, if the rule is arbitrary? Oh, foul. No, that's exempt. Foul. No, exempt. The ruling is, I believe, in my humble observation, is for the haves, the wealthy capitalists, the wealthy businessmen. This home occupation is supported, I believe, by ceramics industry, particularly the San Diego Pottery Guild. I reported this, and my reporting was perceived as against the owners of that next door hazardous activity. Thank you, sir, from the Air Pollution Control District.
Thank you. Your time has expired. There are no more public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now proceed to approving the consent agenda, which includes item 2 and 3. The item 2 is the September 19th meeting minutes, and item 3 is our 2025 Sustainable Communities Working Group schedule. Do we have any comments from the public on item 2 or 3, Clerk?
Yes, we have one comment for each item. Caesar for item 2, and then Caesar, you'll follow for your item 3 comment as well. Caesar, you may make your way to the podium.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Sorry, I think this is the impact of health forgetfulness. I will read now, so I would be hoping up with the time, ma'am. please approve it with the expectation that the bright young blood inputs for the sustainability of great Americans, represented predominantly by young crops, developed the affections of these young participants. These minutes hopefully reflects the benchmark of what we are going to discuss now and tomorrow. And it must be engraved like those heroes on the tablet, vertical tablets in Washington, D.C., the unsung soldiers of Vietnam War and other wars. This is supposed to be our golden patrimony, which should be reflected metaphorically, but actually supposed to be in minutes after minutes. We have not seen our boys, Rita and me, singing, row, row your boat gently down the stream view, representing any community in this great region. Gentleness, Mayor Gloria, where is the representative of Mayor Gloria here? Have you heard and watched the State of the Nation city address by our mayor? The only thing that jeweled our senses is the singing of the national anthem. It was a great performance of Americans singing the national anthem by African Americans, an immigrant like us. That should be embedded in our minutes. The love of country, the affection of Uncle Sam, so that we will work hard to maintain our ideology, freedom, and the land of the brave. Yes, sir. I know that guy. He's work.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you. Are there any working group member comments on item 2 or 3? Comments and or questions on item 2 or 3? Okay, if not, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including item 2 and 3?
So moved.
Thank you, City of San Diego. Second by. Thank you, Lynette. Okay, we have a motion by the City of San Diego and a second by City of La Mesa. The clerk will now call for a hand raised to vote.
All
Clerk?
right. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any noes? Any abstentions? All right, that vote passes unanimously. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thank you all. So now we will move on to our item number 4. And I would like to introduce Zach Hernandez and Lizzie Happy, both associates, regional planners, who would like to present an overview of the work completed today on the San Isidro Mobility Hub and the Blue Line TOD studies.
Thank you. Once again, Zach Hernandez, regional planner here with my colleague Lizzie Havey. I always mispronounce her last name just slightly, but I got it right that time. We're here to present a couple updates on multiple efforts, all that kind of share a common focus of how we better serve our South Bay and border communities with mobility and with transportation, but also with strategies to improve the urban context and the land uses around them to try to maximize the community benefit. But just starting with the work that we're doing to kind of prepare for some changes at the San Isidro station, and to set a little context, I'll throw some numbers at you. But every day, on any given day, we have over 90,000 people, sometimes 100,000 people crossing just northbound, just through the San Isidro Port of Entry alone. And to paint a picture around that, I don't know how many of you have attended a sold-out event at Petco or seen it on TV, but that stadium holds a little bit less than 45,000 people. So imagine 2 sold-out events every single day. That's the volume of people that facility is processing. So it's pretty immense. 20,000 of those 90,000 or so are crossing on foot as pedestrians, just northbound. And 14,000 of them are using transit, primarily the Blue Line. And since 1981, when the Blue Line first started running, San Isidro has been and continues to be the anchor for the regional transit system. But you wouldn't guess that by being there and seeing how the station's laid out and the conditions that it's in right now. Today, it's still that workhorse despite a lot of limiting factors. But to kind of describe or paint a picture of what it feels like to be out there today, I think a combination of the words chaotic, hectic, busy are the words I keep coming back to. Physically speaking, the station is incredibly small for the demand that it serves. And that, coupled with how it's laid out, the configuration of all the modes that connect there, there's a lot of overlap, a lot of conflict points. The infrastructure is kind of tripping over itself. It doesn't really lead to a good experience, let alone optimize functionality and operations. At the pedestrian level, there's a ton of disconnects. You can see when you're out there, you can feel that it was never really designed to handle the foot traffic, and the connections to and from and through the station weren't really designed at the human scale. To me, though, the biggest deficiency is that there's no space for more transit service. Even if we had more trolley and bus lines to go tomorrow, there's no space to stage that kind of thing. Keep in mind, there's still 70,000 people who are choosing to cross the border northbound through San Ysidro in their personal vehicle, despite the unpredictable, super long wait times, leading to a lot of air quality issues, et cetera. For them, the Blue Line and the local bus route that connects here at San Ysidro is not an option. So with that in mind, obviously, SANDAG has a responsibility to plan for the future, but we also have an existing station and system that needs to be improved. And so over the last couple of years, SANDAG, MTS, City of San Diego, and Caltrans worked together to plan for more near-term improvements to the existing station. And through lots of brainstorming sessions, stakeholder meetings and briefings, discussions, gathering community input, talking to station users, we came up with a couple different scenarios for how to improve, how to get more life, more function out of this really critical station sooner rather than later. And what we came up with were different station redesign concepts that all provide better human scale connectivity, more physical capacity for transit, which is super important, all while trying to accommodate the requests and the needs of the federal government, CBP operations, and trying to keep impacts to private property as minimal as possible so that we can actually get it done sooner. So we came up with a series of concepts, an A, B, and a C. We don't have time to get into super fine level of detail necessarily, but we could come back to that. But broadly speaking, what we learned was that these are all kind of feasible, and there are ways to make an impact at the station. Even just thinking about how to shift where the trolley platform is by a couple 100 feet provides and unlocks a lot of much needed space at the station. Really gives you a chance to rethink and redesign the space for best functionality. And sorry, yeah, while advancing those things kind of in the near term, we obviously have a look to the future as well, which I'll get into. And this clip just kind of gives you a sense of where we're going in the near term and how the station might feel on the ground level. So with all that work documented in a planning study that we just wrapped up a few months ago, we're also getting started on some work to look more towards the future. We know there's a need for a long-term vision, not just for transportation, but potential development in and around what is kind of a major hub already and what can be a huge opportunity for a great public space, a big flagship station here at the border. So that's where the San Ysidro mobility hub work really comes in. And looking towards that longer term future, we know there's a possibility for even more transit connections to connect at the border at San Ysidro, some of which are in or will soon be in early planning stages. And hopefully this group has heard presentations or will soon on those projects. But in addition to the functional aspects like the rail and bus connections and how are people going to connect to those things, there's a need for this project in the longer term sense to have a design scheme that's reflective of the binational community, the people who use the station, and a development strategy that includes creative ways to integrate, to capitalize, to kind of leverage the development opportunities that a bigger, longer term investment in the station is going to bring. So with that work, both the near term and the long term work that we have ongoing for San Ysidro are going to be complementing each other. So think Russian nesting doll when you look at this slide. One important aspect, though, that I've been hinting at is the need for a comprehensive strategy around all of this work, one that includes not just the transportation components, but captures the full benefits of a better station by complementing it with the land use improvements that are best going to serve it. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie to talk about another study that's helping us better define that.
Thanks, Zach. The Blue Line TOD study, I'll move on. The Blue Line TOD study is building off near-term infrastructure investments while providing a case study for transit-oriented development, or TOD, as I'll go on, TOD opportunities along the Blue Line trolley. The study will also inform the long-term vision for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub, shaping land use consideration, working alongside our stakeholders in cities. So not wanting to plan for transportation transportation projects in a silo, the goal of the study is to plan holistically to maximize benefits of transportation investments through complementary land use strategies. So a little bit about the study. The Blue Line TOD study identifies opportunities for encouraging and creating TOD at and near two Blue Line trolley stations in South County. The San Ysidro station in the city of San Diego, of course, and Palomar Transit Center in the city of Chula Vista. You'll see examples for both stations throughout the presentation, but the same analysis was completed for each station. The study assesses land use, transportation, and market conditions to inform strategies for TOD implementation that highlight opportunities for potential development, community integration, and mobility improvements. This study will advance regional planning goals and support ongoing parallel efforts in the corridor. Throughout the study, we work closely with stakeholders like the City of San Diego and the City of Chula Vista and MTS. We're making recommendations to the cities and MTS for proposed improvements to the public realm, land use updates, and policy considerations. So today I'll provide a little bit of an overview of some of the key takeaways of studies as we're set to wrap up the final report. So the Palomar Transit Center has high ridership numbers, vacant lots, and surface parking surrounded by commercial and residential land uses. SANDAG is currently planning for a number of investments, including a grade separation project for the trolley and a rapid bus connecting Chula Vista to San Diego State University. Understanding these upcoming investments for Palomar Transit Center, as well as those for San Ysidro, one of our key takeaways include making recommendations to maximize those benefits by leveraging public investment for land use potential and capital improvement projects through informed TOD strategies. Early on in the study, for example, we looked at how the land is utilized compared to current zoning regulations. So what you see on a scale from dark green to red is that green areas have more capacity to support a greater density than current conditions. We set out to analyze why and make corresponding recommendations. With initial analysis complete, we then set out to measure opportunity for TOD potential to help us inform our overall report and implementation strategies. While SANDAG doesn't have land use authority, we're working closely with our stakeholders to provide these recommendations and resources. So this task includes utilizing a TOD index with scores for categories for transit connectivity, walkability, bikeability, development feasibility, and community health and well-being, and corresponding subcategories. This provides a score at the parcel level to analyze TOD potential. The next steps of the study included outlining specific recommendations for implementation strategies. Here, the slide demonstrates some opportunities in San Ysidro to leverage publicly owned land to help meet our regional housing goals, while also uplifting other placemaking strategies for land use development. What we learned in this task and through our market analysis is that while we prepare or wait for the market to catch up, public agencies can invest in affordable housing, station, and public realm improvements at large. I would like to emphasize the study helps make recommendations in line with our public outreach, engagement with the business communities of these areas, and in coordination with our cities. The rendering you see is a concept highlighting highest and best use of the area, but is prototypical, and the market analysis can be scaled and applied throughout the study area and sub-regional level. So some of the next steps include collaborating with stakeholders like city staff and affordable housing developers, leveraging the study further for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub planning work, and then further evaluate options for housing as the opportunity for transportation project mitigation, and explore innovative project delivery models and financing mechanisms at the federal, state, and local level. So zooming out, looking at all these projects that we talked about, first, and how these three different but intertwined efforts relate to one another. The San Ysidro Transit Center improvements, the near-term improvements that Zach talked about, that study concluded in 2024 and will then be moving into preliminary engineering in 2025 with hopes of environmental phase beginning in 2026. The Blue Line TOD study really feeds into the larger San Ysidro Mobility Hub work. So the planning study for that long-term vision will begin in 2025. And in 2026, we'll be seeing land use and development concepts, and then ideally with the study ending in 2027. And with that, we welcome any questions on these different efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach and Lizzie. Clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Yes, I have one in-person commenter, Caesar.
CPG District 4, City of San Diego, they call me Uncle Cesar. 2 nights ago, when I attended one of the roots of political nutrients. And I really commend them because despite their numbers, compared to the attendees here, there were only about 4. And I noticed the spirit of unity and undertaking. I support this movement or program. Sir Presenter, Ma'am Presenter, thank you. You are the product of the affection of Uncle Sam. We pray you grow up healthy. Inhale the clean air, drink the clean water, eat the clean food, and make your community safe so you will flourish and grow as a contributor in this building of the vision of Environmental Quality Act of 1970. That's the key of our effort today. Community sustainability for decent home, decent surroundings, ecology, habitat. Focus on the element of urbanization planning, demand, that will take care of the shell, that will take care of our society, that will take care of everything like what you are trying to do now. Mobility, circulation. We are learning SANDAG. And I think you are learning with the public inputs. I'm so sorry, my team, heroic team, are absent today, but I think they are listening just when they were listening 3 p.m. yesterday with the city
Thank you.
state.
Your time is up. There are no additional public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. Are there any comments from the working group members on this item? Okay, thank you. Now, we will move on to our item 5, and I would like to introduce Sam Sanford, our Senior Regional Planner, and Jacqueline Sisk, who's a Regional Planner as well, who will present a final Regional Vision Zero Action Plan and supporting safety tools and the regional safety statistics.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Sam Sanford. I'm joined by my colleague, Jacqueline Sisk. We're both planners at SANDAG's regional planning team, and our focus over the last year and a half or so has been on traffic safety. So we're coming here today with an update on traffic safety planning work. And it has been a little while since we've been to this group, so I want to recap a bit. Last time we came was about 11 months ago with an update on some of the resources that are coming from this plan. And then about 6 months prior to that, we had a kickoff meeting also with this group. We were able to announce the development of this. Today's presentation is really in 2 parts. First, it's a celebration of an accomplishment of completing the region's first Vision Zero action plan that covers all the cities and all the county as well. The resources that are now available due to that plan that are available to local agencies, regional partners, and the public really to advance safety and take advantage of opportunities that this plan affords. And the second part is talking through how we're already stepping through implementation of that plan. Since this is an action plan, it does result in a series of recommended actions that the agency is already working on. One piece that you'll hear us probably repeat a few times in the presentation, because it is critical, is that this plan makes local agencies, entities of the state, eligible for a federal grant source, which is newer. It's going on its 3rd year now. It's Safe Streets and Roads for All. It's $1 billion a year, and it's carrying on through the new administration at this point. So it is something that local jurisdictions can now apply for safety. So it's something to keep an eye out for, and we expect that notice of funding opportunity to come out in the coming months. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Jacqueline. She's going to talk more about the resources that came from the plan and the development of it and what the plan looks like.
Thank you, Sam. On the next few slides, I'll be discussing highlight products that were developed from the plan. And several of these were brought to the working groups in previous presentations. As you may remember, SANDAG created a centralized traffic safety dashboard, which you see on the screen there. And we took publicly accessible data, which is the accessible statewide integrated traffic record system, and we improved the location accuracy of them and put them into an interactive dashboard so that local agency staff can go to one resource to obtain this information. The next product is the Safety Focus Network. So the Safety Focus Network is a key element in our plan, and this is the concentration of crashes. It identifies 54% of fatal and serious injury crashes occur on just 6% of our roadway network. This is exclusive of all access-controlled freeways, but it does include local roadways and rural highways. The second network is the Systemic Safety Network. This network is a proactive risk-based approach, and it is recommended by the Federal Highway Administration, and it identifies locations that have not yet experienced those high-severity crashes, but they're recommended areas for safety improvements. Throughout the development of this plan, over the past year, our project team has partnered with community partners and conducted extensive outreach and public engagement. We partnered with community-based organizations. We collaborated with local agencies, with many of the jurisdictions in our region. We had project development team meetings, technical advisory group meetings. We did a digital engagement on Social Pinpoint, where we collected nearly 3,000 comments. We presented at nearly 30 presentations, and we raised awareness for Vision Zero and allowed the public to provide input to help shape our solutions. All of the feedback that we received was brought into the planning and development of this action plan. So starting off with this graphic and why Vision Zero matters. The Regional Vision Zero Action Plan is linked in your staff report, but every statistic in this plan represents a human life. 4,433 people between the years of 2018 to 2022 died or suffered life-altering injuries on our San Diego region. This is why Vision Zero exists and why SANDAG developed a Regional Vision Zero action plan. We know that the goal of Vision Zero is to eliminate fatalities by designing systems that reduce the severity of human error, but we know that mistakes are inevitable, but fatalities don't have to be. So prioritizing safety, Vision Zero not only expands mobility options, but it also enhances the quality of life. A key word in this plan is action, and we want to reiterate that. So we have laid out actions in this plan, and based on proven strategies, we are aiming to reduce serious injuries. So on the screen, you'll see a layout of the plan organization. Chapter 1 discuss Vision Zero. And then it goes into understanding the problem, Chapter 3, developing solutions, and then Chapter 4, how do we get to zero? So this is a roadmap on how cities can make progress toward zero. The goal is to institutionalize actions. So in all the changes that we do with this in mind, we do want to weave in the typical SANDAG processes and roles. So we've created this implementation action starting from left to right. The categories being coordinate, advocate, plan, fund, educate, evaluate, and implement. In the plan, Appendix C goes into further detail of all of these implementation actions on how we will get to zero. Some near-term action examples that we want to focus on the slide, we will dive a little deeper into 3 examples of the implementation actions. The first one being fund. SANDAG helps to manage 2 grant programs, one being the Active Transportation Program, and the second one being the Smart Growth Incentive Program. Criteria for both of these programs have been updated to better align with the Vision Zero Action Plan, and we are working in close proximity to the safety networks. These safety-focused networks and the systemic safety network. Points are awarded for improvements to safety. The next one is looking to support local jurisdictions with new legislation, such as Assembly Bill 43. Assembly Bill 43, it's now fully in effect, and it does provide more flexibility for owning agencies to reduce speed limits on their roads. SANDAG has provided technical analysis support for these safety corridors, and SANDAG, with the support of our consultant, has developed a methodology and the data that jurisdictions will need to provide, and will be providing this data to jurisdictions. Local jurisdictions have the option to utilize this data and elect to reduce speed limits on their roadways. But essentially, the materials will be provided to the jurisdictions, and they can make that decision. In addition, the elements of the Assembly Bill 43, the consultants team is working on developing a guide on how to work in those elements. The third that we are going to be focusing on is Local Agency Vision Zero Resource Hub. So this is an online tool, an online resource that is provided to local jurisdictions. So some of you may have received email communication from me to access this resource hub. We're working with local jurisdictions to provide a centralized location where it's going to house our digital engagement outreach comments from last winter, ideas for countermeasures and safety solutions, and the risk factors, as well as our 2 networks that were discussed in the previous slides. So the next steps in the Vision Zero Action Plan, as mentioned in the previous slide, the top of the list is AB 43, implementation and support. We have met with all of the local jurisdictions in our project development team meeting to explain to them how this is going to look like when providing the data for safety corridors. And the next is going to be the 2025 regional plan. So similar to the 21 regional plan, which had a policy element within safety, Vision Zero is also going to be implemented and discussed in the 25 regional plan with a similar policy element with insights to the plan's development. And then the next point down is supporting agency applications for the grant that Sam discussed in the earlier slides for the Safe Streets and Roads for All project. And SANDAG is here to support on the technical side of that with the element from the plan, the development of the plan. And we're here to support local jurisdictions and be advocates to help them with the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. This allows jurisdictions to be eligible for the Safe Streets and Roads grant. And now I will pass it to Sam so that he can discuss the Safety Measure 1 target setting.
Thank you. All right, so switching to the next part of this, and this is where we are looking how to integrate the actions within the Vision Zero Action Plan into our typical practices. So I've come to this group in years past with this federal mandate where regional planning agencies like SANDAG have to set up safety targets every year for the following calendar year. And this has been a product we've been doing since 2018. Now we're looking at this with fresh eyes of how do we capitalize on this process and bring it into Vision Zero, into the actions itself. It's a process we had to do anyways. We coordinate with the state, but now we're looking at an opportunity to come to working groups and policy advisory committees with an annual update, both on observed conditions on safety, but also to talk through implementation of the Vision Zero action plan and how we're doing on that step, in addition to all the monitoring and performance, to kind of have a once-a-year update in the realm of traffic safety. So on the slide has a summary of what this is on the federal side, that it is a required process. The statewide, we're looking at setting targets 3 years out in advance and then working backwards to a 1-year target, which I'll show in a slide in a minute. And then it has the 5 rules that we must do performance monitoring for. We're also looking to add to these performance measures to see if there's others that are better suited for operations for our region and the challenges that we see with the traffic fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. So statewide, Caltrans has established targets for those 5 measures, which is shown on this slide. Looking at the performance measures on the left, and then you can see the target in 2025 for that calendar year and the reductions. So Caltrans is pushing, in alignment with the SANDAG Regional Vision Zero Action Plan, a reduction in all of these performance measures, which SANDAG is supportive of. Now, how does this actually work? Essentially, the challenge we have is we can take current trends of what we're seeing on our roadways with safety data, look at influencing factors, and then we have to extrapolate out for some missing years and some expected future. So if we take some data from our region, this is our regional fatalities from 2013 to 2022, we can then look at a trend line to see, okay, unfortunately, it's trending the wrong direction. This is not the way we want to see this graph of growth. Then we look out in future years to come up with a target area, but we're developing this cone of uncertainty in these future years. But you'll notice there's a big gap in 23 and 24. One of the biggest challenges we have is a huge data lag. We have a 2-year lag from when an incident occurs on our roadways from when a planning agency like SANDAG gets to see the data. So we have to think through, okay, what's happened in 23 and 24, which already has passed, and try and inform 25 and 27. So we get this high and low range methodology of where we think we might be in the future, and that's where the influencing factors come in. So the influencing factors, things that are supportive, that help safety and help drive down the number of fatalities and serious injuries. There's been a lot in the state legislature recently that have been super helpful. Jacqueline already spoke to the speed management legislation, Assembly Bill 43. Another one that's been getting a lot of news lately is the intersection visibility legislation, AB 413, where it's going to be a citable offense for a car to park within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crossing. So one to be aware of, and I think I've seen a lot of campaigns coming from jurisdictions already to educate the public on that one. And there's others, Complete Streets, helping Caltrans and project selection, all the projects that jurisdictions are working on with enhanced visibility on crosswalks, with bike lanes, those are also a supporting influence. And then there's also factors such as demographics, changes, mode share, how much people are driving versus using transit or biking, vehicle fleet age. As fleets are newer, there are more safety features at this point for the occupants of the vehicles, not necessarily for the non-occupants, which is another change that could be coming from federal regulations. And then the economy, which drives how much travel we do within our region. So the next 5 slides get into this first idea of coming to working groups and giving an annual update of how we're doing as a level setting, what challenges do we have ahead of us, and what we can do to stem the tide is what we're going to see in these slides. So we're looking at regional fatalities. This is a blow up of the first slide I showed with a chart on it. Our region is trending in the wrong direction with fatalities increasing. 2022 looks a little bit better. When you look at the preliminary data for 23 and 24 for all the measures I'm going to show, they look slightly better, but we need to see the final data to know for sure. If we normalize the number of fatalities by the amount of driving we do, or the driving is performed on our roadways, it's a much more flat trend, but it is a still slight increase. And you'll see for most of these, there's a big uptick in the COVID 2020 timeframe, and then it's stayed high since then. Switching to serious injuries, now with the blue bars, again, it's an upward trend using the rolling average of the 5-year rolling average. And then serious injury rate, when we normalize by the amount of driving that it performed on our roadways, it's also an increase still. The last measure is aimed at capturing all the vulnerable user usage. So it looks at both pedestrian and biking, serious injury, and fatality. So it's a sum. It captures a lot of data in one measure. And this one has a very similar trend as well. So this is the first of what I anticipate to be annual and many years of updates. In future years, we'll have updates about the implementation of the Vision Zero Action Plan, highlight some projects from jurisdictions doing wonderful work in the realm of safety. And that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Sam and Jacqueline, for the presentation. Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, we have one in-person public comment. Caesar?
Uncle Cesar, yes, thank you for this powerful presentation. Laudable. And let's continue. I have learned that there is a keyword which we suggest not to forget because this is a treatment plan as far as governance is concerned. The keyword ARASTI, ARASTIE, ARASTI. In the delivery of public good, which we are crafting, doing, producing, is all about delivery of that public good. To ensure that there will be, always will be a decent home and suitable ecology or habitat for the single reason, survival of man. Let me remind this keyword, ARASTI. It must be available, it must be responsive, it must be adequate. Simple in the delivery, like the Amazon or eBay delivery system. Timely, efficiently, and effectively. Please remember, this is our contribution as learner, ARASTI. So I would ask now, everybody, my fellow workers, have we ARASTI this program? With the reminder that we cannot defeat nature. We can only protect humans and the thing. The state of the city address is, to me, inadequate, inefficient. Why? The subject of delivery was not pictured
Thank
behind
you.
the
Your time has expired. There are no additional public comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the working group members on this item? Yes, please go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. Every graphic that you showed shows a trend line going up, which to me is concerning because I walk and use transit as much as I can. Is the work that you're doing including any kind of investigation as to what factors may have contributed to that increase, and obviously what your recommendations are going to be to mitigate those factors?
Thank you for the question. See, the graphics I showed were region-wide, so they include every jurisdiction across the entire county. And so they do hide a lot of that nuance that comes down to neighborhood improvements, community improvements at jurisdictions. So that is something, when there is a crash, jurisdictions have a response team that go out, especially to the high severity crash. They have a response team that goes out, will include their traffic engineer and others to understand better what occurred. Those statistics that I shared are also high level, that they don't get into the details about the contributing factors. We have that information, and a lot of that is available now on the traffic safety dashboard that was on the first slide. So if you're interested in understanding that more, that's available. And then another resource in our SANDAG open data portal, it has more attributes that we couldn't quite squeeze into that dashboard. The data set, it has a lot to it. And so we had to kind of pick which attributes would be the best or most common that the public would want to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Yes, please go ahead.
I just had a question on equity areas. You say that it's 19% of the region. Can you explain what that is and how do you define equity?
Yeah, on this one, we were able to leverage the grantor that gave us the funds in order to create the plan itself. U.S. Department of Transportation has a equitable transportation communities tool, and that predefines their equity areas. That included tribal areas as well as areas where they looked at income and then race as well. So it was a tool that was available to the grantors.
Okay, perfect. Are there any last questions before? No? Okay, thank you, team.
Thank you.
All right, lastly, we have item 6, and I would like to introduce Anna Bettis, Senior Regional Planner, and Samaya Elder and Natasha Dog, who's also our regional planners, who will present an update on development of the long-term vision for climate action in the region and seek feedback on the draft greenhouse gas reduction measures.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Bettis. As Sarah mentioned, I'm a senior regional planner here at SANDAG on the climate and environmental mitigation team. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm here joined by my colleagues Samaya and Natasha, who are associate planners also here at SANDAG. And we're going to be sharing an update with you and seeking your feedback on the work that our team has been doing as part of EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which is supporting the development of regional and state climate action plans all across the country. With that, I'll move to the agenda. I'll kick us off with an overview of the grant that's supporting this work, and then I'll provide an update on the progress we've made on one element of that grant called the Regional Climate Action Roadmap, which will be the main focus of today's presentation. And then I'll turn it over to my colleagues who will talk about the process for developing the draft greenhouse gas reduction measures that we'll be sharing with you today. And we'll also give an overview of the process for developing those measures, which has included some close collaboration and coordination with local government climate staff. For some background, SANDAG received a planning grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, which includes 3 deliverables. The first was the Priority Climate Action Plan, which was focused on measures that could reduce emissions primarily from transportation, buildings, and energy by 2030. And that work was completed in March of last year. And the work we're doing now is really building on what was done in the PCAP. So today we'll be focusing on the second deliverable, which is due to the EPA at the end of this year, the Regional Climate Action Roadmap, which is a comprehensive long-term vision for reducing emissions in the region through 2050, which will include additional sectors and will build on the PCAP, as I mentioned. And it's being developed in close coordination with the 2025 Regional Plan. Lastly, that grant also has us report back on the status of that work in 2027. So now turning to that second deliverable, the roadmap will provide a comprehensive vision to support regional collaboration to combat climate change. And with that in mind, I want to highlight that it's not just things that SANDAG can do, but also other agencies across the region. It also builds on existing climate action planning in the region and will include an updated regional greenhouse gas inventory, regional greenhouse gas projections out to 2050, economy-wide greenhouse gas reduction targets that are aligned with state goals, and will also include measures and actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the 7 sectors that you can see listed on the right side of the slide. Lastly, the roadmap will look at the benefits to environmental justice communities, the reduction in air pollution that would occur if these measures were to be implemented, and the anticipated workforce needs. And with that, I'll hand it to my colleague Samaya, who's going to talk about the measure development process. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Hi again, everyone. I'm Samaya. So now that you've heard a little bit about the larger grant program itself and the roadmap deliverable, we're now going to delve into our process that we went through to create our greenhouse gas reduction measures. So
as Anna mentioned earlier, throughout this whole process, we've been collaborating closely with the sustainability and climate staff at your jurisdictions, at other public agencies, and other relevant organizations. So, moving on. Starting in July of 2024, we hosted a regional climate table workshop, which included representation from local governments, public agencies, environmental groups, CBOs, tribes, and other types of similar nonprofits and climate stakeholders to hear their ideas for measures and gather input on climate priorities to address in the roadmap. We then spent the next several months compiling and assessing the information that we received and conducting additional research to supplement. Then in October, we had meetings with technical stakeholders to help us further develop our initial greenhouse gas reduction measures. And then in addition to these first two elements of the process, we also have numerous ongoing activities that are helping us to get feedback on our measures and hear more about climate priorities. These have included interagency meetings with local government climate staff, as I mentioned earlier. We also have partnerships with 2, soon to be 3 CBOs in the region to conduct community outreach. And then we're doing other engagement, such as presentations at the working group today. So with that process in mind, I'm going to move on to the actual draft measures themselves. So before we get into that, a couple of notes and caveats. Natasha and I will be sharing the measures for each sector covered in the roadmap, as well as some examples of corresponding objectives and supporting actions. However, I really want to note that the measures are very comprehensive. We can't cover everything in today's presentation, so not only do we welcome any feedback that you might have at the end of our presentation today, but we also highly encourage you to review the measures, which are on page 30, start on page 35 of your agenda packet, and feel free to email us with additional comments after today's meeting, and there'll be more on that from Natasha at the end. I also want to, of course, acknowledge that these are still in draft form. We're here today looking to incorporate additional feedback. And lastly, I want to remind you that the roadmap, as Anna mentioned, is a regional vision for collaborative climate action, meaning the types of measures that we're about to go through represent lots of different types of agencies and stakeholders, and they would not all be implemented by SANDAG. So with that, I'm going to get started with transportation. So this includes continuing and growing many of the key programs and projects already underway in the region. Some of the measures include increasing public transit use, expanding active transportation, including walking and biking, expanding flexible fleet services. So these include neighborhood electric vehicles and micromobility. Continuing and expanding transportation demand management programs such as van pool to reduce VMT. Increasing the adoption of zero-emission vehicles, and this includes passenger vehicles, so light duty, as well as medium and heavy duty trucks and buses. And then finally, we have reducing fuel use from idling, and this can look like installing roundabouts and implementing curb management strategies. Moving on to the next 2 sectors, and you can see this one slide has 2 sectors, and if you ever get lost in the next couple of slides, they're color-coded to the icons in the top right corner. So starting with electricity, which is the blue one on the left, we have one measure, which is to decarbonize the regional electric grid. This includes things like increasing participation in fully renewable electricity options ahead of what's already being mandated by the state, as well as increasing the generation of distributed renewable energy throughout the region. And then for buildings, the one in the middle and right in gray, we have increasing the electrification of buildings. So for example, converting buildings from natural gas use to electric, as well as increasing the energy efficiency of buildings for those that are already electrified. And for both of these building measures, we're looking at municipal, residential, and non-residential or commercial buildings. So with those 3, I'm going to pass it on to Natasha to cover the remaining measures and discuss next steps.
All right, thanks, Samaya. So again, my name's Natasha. So I'll be covering the last 4 sectors in our roadmap, starting with the ones here on the screen, kicking off with natural and working lands. We have these top 3 measures in green, and these are specifically looking at conserving and preserving our existing ecosystems that, and with actions that would act to capture carbon and act as sinks. With the first measure, we have conserve marine and wetland ecosystems. So this could include actions that look to preserve and restore wetlands, including lagoons, estuaries, and salt marshes, along with kelp forests and eelgrass beds. Then we have conserve forests, shrublands, and chaparral ecosystems. And this measure would include actions that seek to preserve and restore these ecosystems and implement existing multiple species and habitat conservation programs. And then the last measure under this sector would be to increase urban canopy cover. And actions could look like developing an urban forestry management plan with a regional inventory to be able to assess where canopy cover is most needed and prioritize environmental justice communities. Then moving on to the next sector here, waste and materials management in the bottom row. We have 3 measures under the sector looking to limit waste and reduce emissions, starting with divert waste from landfills. And actions here are focused on diverting organic waste, waste from construction and demolition, as well as increasing or expanding food recovery programs here in the region. Next measure we have is to reduce landfill emissions through increased methane capture. And this could include expanding programs for methane capture at our landfills and conducting field testing with reports of methane capture rates. And then lastly, we have a measure to reduce emissions from water and wastewater treatment facilities. So this could look like expanding and implementing methane capture at these facilities and increasing energy efficiency of existing processes to treat and distribute water. Next slide, we have our last 2 sectors in our roadmap, agriculture and industry. So I'll start with agriculture, which are the 4 left orange boxes. First up, we have reduce agriculture operations emissions. And this can be supported by transitioning operations to cleaner fuel types and energy sources and increasing overall energy efficiency of machinery. Then we have measure to expand urban farming in the region, which could include expanding or identifying sites such as community gardens at public spaces and promoting purchasing from local agricultural businesses, farms, and gardens. Then we have conserve agricultural lands, which would include actions like supporting the voluntary dedication of agricultural conservation easements and looking into different zoning. And then lastly, for this sector, we have manage soil health to sequester carbon. And this would focus on improving soil management practices and developing programs to encourage the use of regenerative practices such as carbon farming. And then last but not least, our final sector is the industry sector, and we have 2 measures. And while we don't have a huge industrial sector here in San Diego, there are still ways to reduce emissions. So the first measure is to reduce energy intensity of industrial facilities. And this can look like increasing industrial efficiency overall and increasing distributed energy resources in industrial facilities in the region. And then our last measure is to reduce fugitive and short-lived climate pollutants and emissions. And for those of you who don't know, fugitive emissions are those that are unintentionally released, like leaks or discharge from equipment at these facilities. And actions under this measure would be to reduce these fugitive emissions and also reduce high global warming potential refrigerant use, which is a common short-lived pollutant. So that wraps up all of our draft measures for our 7 sections in the roadmap. And I'll take a look now at some next steps for the measures and our outreach that we'll be completing. So we will be seeking feedback on these draft reduction measures and their supporting actions throughout this month and next. And once those are finalized, we'll be working with our consultant, who is USD EPIC, to quantify the emissions reductions from these measures. As far as feedback and input goes, we are collecting this through a number of different avenues. So we will be continuing to present at additional working groups. We will be hosting another climate table in February to review the measures. And then we'll also be releasing a public survey in the coming months to look out for. And in addition to these measures, we are also working with EPIC to complete our updated regional greenhouse gas inventory and plan to have that ready by this spring. And lastly, looking further ahead, we aim to publish the draft roadmap and host another climate table this summer and be able to come back to you all with milestone updates along the way. So we do have a call to action for you today. Like I mentioned, we are looking for input on the draft measures that we've talked about today. We're happy to take input, questions, comments here today, but if you would like to take some more time to review, feel free to look at the attachment in your staff report. And we're happy to take questions or comments over email at this email here listed on the screen by the end of the month. That is our information again. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to your input.
Thank you, team, for your presentation. Clerk, any comments from the public on this item?
Yes, we have one public commenter in person, Caesar.
Presentation from the young, loving Americans. I see my classmate, governing body meeting air pollution control district. I see my classmate from the city representative, respectable one, very familiar faces, very familiar ideology, very familiar philosophy in life. I would like just to keep you fed with nutrition, persuasion. This is the core of all what we do as far as clean air is concerned. This is what we call the gift of nature, which we must protect, which this air quality must be for all humans, whether you are black, whether you're white, whether wherever you live. This program is a renaissance, expectedly. There must be a gear change. How is that? A stronger energy to propel our dreams into reality. I am speaking of metaphor, I'm speaking of something, but the meaning is this. Our governance, especially the core city of this region, is failing. This city address, forgive me, I'm just like a parrot. It's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. Look at the backdrop. The only thing that we appreciate is the reminder, the singing of our national hymn.
Thank you. Your time has expired. There are no additional public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. Are there any comments from the working group members on this item? Yes, please.
Hi, Rob Eford from Carlsbad, and thanks for the presentation. I have one thing I'd like to confirm and then one question. So the first one is, I'd just like to confirm that nothing in the roadmap obligates jurisdictions as it relates to the reduction measures?
Yeah, that is correct. These are voluntary measures.
Okay. And then secondly, for those jurisdictions that already have caps, updated caps, adopted caps, what is then the use as you see it of this roadmap?
Sure. What we are trying to do with the regional climate action roadmap is bring together potential projects and programs that could advance climate action in the region. We might be able to identify, for example, opportunities that could be better addressed at a regional scale than by a local jurisdiction. So one of the outcomes that we hope to see with the roadmap is that we can be better positioned for funding for projects, as local jurisdictions or agencies seek funding. Ideally, they can point to say, look how my work is advancing this, regional roadmap that we're all driving towards. So that's one of the big outcomes that we'd like to see is making these climate programs and projects more competitive for funding.
If I could have a follow-up on that, then so if the goal is about regional action, regional climate action, I guess I'm not seeing the role between the individual jurisdictions that have limited authority versus SANDAG's role in whatever these future programs or funding opportunities would be.
Yeah, I think it's inclusive of both. So we're building on what's in local caps and then looking at what might be accomplished at a regional scale. So I don't know if that helps address your question. So it's sort of a both, and there may be things that SANDAG would be responsible for moving forward. For example, there's things related to EVs that we've included in there that SANDAG could take forward. And there's other things that would be addressed by maybe local jurisdictions or regional agencies. If you look at the measures, again, I think they're on page 35 of your materials, we have identified potential agencies
with the authority to implement these measures. So that could also help address that question.
Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Mike Watt with the Air Pollution Control District. And first of all, thank you for your presentation and your work on putting this framework together. There certainly are things in there that our agency can help support existing programs that we have, particularly for incentives on things like light duty CEVs, agricultural equipment, some heavy duty trucks, things of that nature. So happy to take a closer look and provide some feedback on those things. Just in glancing through it, I think there are some other areas where there might be some challenges associated with certain things. Given, yes, we are the regional air agency, but there's certain limitations that we have in terms of our authority, particularly when it comes to things like GHGs. So we'll take a look through and provide some feedback, but just wanted to note, again, appreciate your work on this. And I was excited to see there's a lot of areas where we already have kind of existing programs that could help support some of the efforts that you identified here. So thank you.
Noted. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. And yeah, we look forward to hearing that guidance that you might have. As you'll see, there's sectors that SANDAG has maybe less experience or familiarity with, and so being able to leverage the expertise of others in the region is really helpful. So really look forward to hearing your feedback.
Go ahead.
I'll echo everyone's praise for this information. Thank you. It's very helpful. As Rob was asking his questions, I think it kind of triggered something, maybe a way that we could better align the efforts locally with the regional efforts would be through the Smart Growth Implementation Grant. That program has a pot of funds for climate action plans. I wouldn't encourage it for this round since that call for funding just went out, but perhaps in future rounds, there could be ways to tie that funding to a regional implementation of the roadmap through some local actions.
Yeah, thank you. We'll just talk about that internally with our colleagues. Appreciate that idea.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. And with that, our next Sustainable Communities Working Group meeting will be held March 20th at 1:30. And then just a friendly reminder, our joint working group, again, is going to be on February 13th at 10 a.m. at the Central Library. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned.